Hello there to you all. This is Afro Perspectives. I hope I find you all in good health. War veterans in Zimbabwe have applied to the High Court to set aside the Land Tenure Implementation Committee headed by businessman Kudakwashe Tagwirei. The War Veterans Pressure Group, led by Joseph Chingua, has hired the best legal brains there is in Zimbabwe, namely Tendai BT. And the pressure group has applied to the High Court and requested that President Emerson Mnangagwa and his Minister of Agriculture, Anxious Masuka, to respond to their complaint. Chingua has asked the court to declare null and void the Land Tenure Implementation Committee. In effect, he is asking the High Court to declare that it is illegal and it cannot continue doing what it has been doing for the past 5 or so months. I'd like to give you a bit of background. In December of last year, that is in 2024, Emerson Mnangagwa, flanked by his favorite businessman, Kudakwashe Tagwirei, launched the Land Tenure Implementation Program. At that point in time, that is just before Christmas last year, Tagwirei said that Emerson Mnangagwa's government aimed at giving 24,000 title deeds to the small-scale farmers on the A1 farms and the commercial-size farms of the A2 model within a time period of 18 months. What has rubbed the war vets the wrong way are the demands of the Land Tenure Implementation Committee. Take this little tiny detail. To convert an offer letter into a title deed, Tagwirei and the Land Tenure Implementation Committee are asking new owners, that is the owners of farms, mostly of them are war vets anyway, to pay $500 per hectare. That might not sound a lot, but if you actually work out the detail, that's where the problem comes in. Consider this. An average farm on the A2 scheme, that is the commercial size farms, is 125 hectares. If you are paying $500 per hectare, then what the government is essentially saying is that an average farm from the A2 model is valued at a staggering $62,000, a massive sum by any standard. It is not clear whether that figure, the $500 per hectare, is paid in what form. Is it per month? Is it as a one giant sum, a lump sum? And it is not even clear within what time scale, what time frame the war vets are supposed to pay this money. It's simply a figure that if you know how the war vets are supposed to pay the $500 per hectare, please you can add your opinion in the comments below. The government of Emerson Mnangagwa itself, when it launched the Land Tenure Implementation Program, it said that the owners of farms will have access to bank loans. But I doubt it. If this is the case, I doubt that very much. Like everything else the government of Emerson Mnangagwa is doing, that's simply an empty promise. And then farming in Zimbabwe has now become an activity you carry at the pleasure of the political elite. And this has been the case for the past 20 or so years. As you can see by the actions of the war vet challenging the very people who are saying, oh, we are doing this to help you, we are doing this to empower you. Why would you challenge something that's proposed to empower you? This is simply another avenue where the political elites, this is another channel where the political elites are simply enriching themselves. The War Veterans Pressure Group, led by Joseph Chingua, is arguing that there is an injustice in being asked by the Land Tenure Implementation Committee, led by Tagwirei, to pay for land when the so-called chefs are getting farms as Christmas presents. In December last year, for instance, that is late 2024, the Herald gave a list of those who had just been given title deeds by the Land Tenure Implementation Committee. And the list comes across as a who is who in ZANU-PF, in the ZANU-PF elite, the privileged few who enjoy a seat in the ZANU-PF gravy train. The Herald, it reminded us way back in December that the ZANU-PF elite and the party faithful was that Emerson Mnangagwa himself had been given title deeds for his precab farm in Kwekwe. Then another recipient of title deeds was Minister of State for Masingo Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Ezra Chadzamira, for his 121-hectare Cresta Ibeka farm, which lies approximately 10 kilometers west of Masingo. And then you have got Tsitsigeza, another ZANU-PF loyalist and praise singer, who is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. She was handed over the title deeds to Kwaeda farm in concession somewhere in Mashonaland Central. Then you have other recipients of title deeds such as Vincent Ungwe, chairperson of the Public Service Commission. Then you have Herbert Murerwa, a former cabinet minister who was, if I'm not wrong, in charge of the Ministry of Lands, that is under former President Robert Mugabe. And then you have a traditional chief Wengai Rushwaya from Gutu in Masingo province. Then that's how this whole program of title deeds is working. And then you have to consider this tiny detail. Take, for instance, Cresta Ibeka farm, as I've said above, owned by Ezra Chadzamira. It's 121 hectares of farmland. And at the rates set by Taguire's Land Tenure Implementation Committee, that is at $500 per hectare if you want to have access to title deeds and call it and call yourself owner of a farm. It is worth $60,500. And the question is, before Ezra Chadzamira was given the title deeds to the Cresta Ibeka farm, did he actually pay even a single cent for it? I doubt it. None of that happened. These are the ZANU-PF elites, a crooked elite. And this is the injustice that is driving the anger of people like Joseph Chingua and the War Veterans Pressure Group. It is this open kind of patronage, a system designed to reward ZANU-PF praise singers with gifts of farms to enrich an elite. And believe you me, I'm a big fan of uplifting our own brothers and sisters. However, there ought to be a certain degree of fairness to the whole scheme. It cannot be a free-for-all like this. Everything is reduced to the level of jokes when Emerson Mnangagwa is throwing farms at his friends like confetti. As you can see for yourself, most of these title deeds, the war vets are being asked to pay for. The big fish in ZANU-PF are getting those farms for free. And then if you have people like Joseph Chingua, he has, in precise terms, been stating that the issue was land, that is his words, I'm quoting him here, land was at the epicenter of our struggle for independence. As war veterans, we are particularly concerned that 3.5 billion in American dollars is being paid to farmers when we war veterans are dying and languishing in deep poverty across the length and breadth of this country. And our hospitals are going without medicines and schools are going without textbooks. So you get it. The 3.5 billion Chungwa is talking about is the figure Emerson Mnangagwa agreed to pay to former commercial farmers in 2020 under the so-called Global Compensation Deed. He signed the deal in 2020. But one would want to ask, why would Emerson Mnangagwa want 82 commercial farmers, some of them war vets, to fork out an average of $60,000 to convert their offer letters to title deeds? The truth is that Emerson Mnangagwa's government is not only broke, but does not have any access to loans from international lending institutions. So basically, it cannot actually make good on the promises to the former commercial farmers. So this is where we are. You can see for yourself, Emerson Mnangagwa promises to pay billions to farmers who lost their properties as part of the fast-track land reform program. Then he discovers that the public coffers are empty. There is no money to settle its obligations. That is the government, his government, Emerson Mnangagwa's government. It's broke. If information trickling in from Emerson Mnangagwa's government is true, then the farmers can breathe a sigh of relief. At the beginning of the year, the government advised that it has paid 3.1 million US dollars to 378 former farmers. And then if Emerson Mnangagwa were to be taken for his word, then he is compensating the commercial farmers. That's okay, that's all right. But my own 2 cents to this sort of debate is that it's a long shot that most will receive such compensation. Here is the cash. The government has promised that it will only pay 1% of any claim in cash, and the balance is paid through US-denominated treasury bonds maturing in 10 years. So take this, this tiny inconvenient fact. You have an aging group of farmers, most of them in their 70s, having to wait 10 more years for the bonds to mature. Well, I guess I have to, this is promise, and I just because I have to go back to the court case, and that problem is for the farmers to sort out. That's not my my problem. Even the overall figure of 3.5 billion is contested. There is no known model or method on how the government arrived at that figure. It's simply an estimate, a ballpark figure, as the Americans are fond of saying. Chingua has called these figures, I'll just have to quote him here, word for word, so at least you get an idea of what we are talking about. The challenge we have as war veterans is that the government has not disclosed how it assessed the value and valued the 3.5 billion. There must be a disclosure of the improvements that were being valued. Is it dams? Is it buildings? Is it anything permanently fixed to the land? Yes, that's the gist of the complaint, and that is Joseph Chingua. I'm quoting him here. For those who are familiar with any form of improvements on farms such as fences and other forms of equipment, they degrade with time. And the war vets are arguing that if the government should take into account the value of those improvements, those improvements are subject to wear and tear over time. Accountants have a fancy term for such a process, and they call it depreciation. If the compensation is for movable assets, that is what the war vets, Chingua and his group are saying. If the compensation is for movable assets such as fences, center pivots, tractors, or irrigation pipe, these must be subjected to depreciation calculations. And that is what Joseph Chingua is arguing, at least the complaint itself as presented to the High Court. And then there is a question of where the whole arrangement itself from the so-called global compensation did to people like Tagwire and his land tenure implementation committee. Are they illegal? Are they illegal at all? Sorry, are they illegal at all? What the war vets are questioning is whether what they are doing is permissible under Zimbabwean law. Their argument is that for anything to be legal, Parliament ought to have passed the law to that effect. And again, I have to quote Chingua here, so at least we can get an idea of what this court case is all about. There is no law in Zimbabwe that offers a method of assessment as it stands and the evaluation of improvements. The war veterans just said. And then there is the story, and then the story does not end there. Kudata Gwirei is considered by most sane people in Zimbabwe as part of a group of shady businessmen with connections to the ZANU-PF elite who are plundering Zimbabwe dry. You have heard Chingua complain of hospitals going without medicines, and you have heard schools collapsing, schools going without textbook, those sort of complaints. Then there is also the issue of complying with the Constitution of 2013. Both Emerson Mnangagwa and Tagwirei have to follow the rules as set up in the Constitution. Joseph Chingua and the War Veterans Pressure Group are simply saying that both Mnangagwa and Tagwirei are not even bothered about what the Constitution of 2013 says about compensating former commercial farmers. And that is a truth most people might not want to acknowledge. It's a fact. It's that for most Zimbabweans, their affairs are being run by a man who does not care about things like fairness and justice. He is simply a dictator. Emerson Mnangagwa is your typical dictator, a man who is fond of making rules as he goes along. Emerson Mnangagwa and his government have not passed an act of parliament which is required to give effect to section 295 subsection 3 of the Constitution. And it states, that is section 295.3, those individuals whose agricultural land was acquired by the state are entitled to compensation by the state only for improvements that were on the land when it was acquired. So there you have it. And that's what the War Veterans Group and the advisors, Tendai BT and the like, that is their argument. And thank you for tuning in. I have done some work on how the political elite in Zimbabwe plunders resources in the name of the people. And please find some of those clips in the following video links. And if there is anything that I have got wrong or have failed to mention, please drop your comments below. We are only a small channel and your support is highly appreciated. So please subscribe and don't forget to give me some likes. Thank you. Siyabonga. Tatenda. Bye.